in 10, 12 miles. This is not something to take lightly. Now the problem in Tampa. If the track makes its way, and right now we would believe it will be somewhere out here toward Tampa, but if it stays more in this westerly track, Anderson, and stays off the shore, that's probably the worst case scenario for Tampa and St. Pete, because this inundation of that surge will move up into these areas, and it'll be even greater than anyone expected. That's if it takes that track. I'm more concerned that after Irma moves north of Tampa, because then what we're going to find is the winds coming around on the backside will come in from the west, northwest. So once you think that the storm is past and everything is fine, you're going to get inundated again on the backside of the storm, on the southern end of that eye. There's a wide range of winds, and that surge will continue for some time, even if the storm is well north. So a lot of concerns in the hours and days ahead. Again, as we continue to monitor this, we're still waiting on a northerly turn, because until that happens, there's not a whole lot that we can do as far as pinpointing a landfall. Again, the National Hurricane Center, these are the best of the world. The men and women who work here are the best in the world. So we will see what the models do. We will see if there's more of a shift westward. There is no best case scenario here, because even people in the southeast and areas of Miami up toward Boca Raton, if you think that you're in the clear here, unfortunately, our tornado watches will start increasing off toward areas of the north and northeast, and it'll continue that way all the way on the Carolina coast. Anderson.
Yeah. Tom, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, Key West is now reporting, Anderson, our very first hurricane wind gusts at 74 miles per hour. Anything at 74 miles per hour or greater is hurricane strength, so it's begun. I want to take a look at our track, which we will get a new one at the top of the hour, but notice the cone of uncertainty. We continue to watch the storm move west-northwesterly, so we're not getting that northerly component just yet, but where it moves, especially around Naples to Tampa, is critical here, and then turn off toward areas putting Atlanta in the worst position for the possible winds. That's that front right quadrant. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. Again, the eye still off the coast. We're not looking at an eye wall per se around the center of the eye, but notice how we have the bright colors now. That is the eye wall replacement cycle. So once that band starts to tighten up, then we're going to have an increase in our speed. Again, we don't have any tornado warnings right now, but I do want to go back to what we mentioned just moments ago when I took you through the Keys. And then, of course, we went into Fort Myers. I want to back up just a little bit and show you parts of around where we were talking about in Marco Island. This is a storm surge inundation map that is issued by the National Hurricane Center. And Anderson, this is almost a worst case scenario. It's the 90th percentile of our probabilities and our damage. Everything you see in blue is 1 to 3 feet. In yellow is 3 to 6. In orange is 6 to 9, and then in red is greater than 9. Now, this is the Everglades. This is fine. No one lives down here, but that is well inland. Let's go up to Naples a little bit. Notice actually down in the Keys, you'll see as well, we've got some yellow in here. That's 1 to 3. But when you talk about Naples, and again, on the coastline, significant inundation with the storm surge, and it goes 10, 12 miles inland. I mean, this is not to be taken lightly. Even if it's 1 to 3 feet, 12 miles inland, that's going to do some major flooding. All right, to the north, there's Bonita Springs. We're going to continue to go up. Here's Marco Island. Now, I mentioned this earlier. We showed this map on Google Earth and the thousands and thousands and thousands of homes. This gives you an idea now of you're over 9, 10, 11 feet of water, and it continues through all the inlets. Now to the north, as we continue our progress, we're going to take you up to, here we go. All right, here's Cape Coral. You can see Port Charlotte. Notice the red inundation around all the islands and inlets. You get into Fort Myers, you're well into plus 9 to 10 feet. Well inland, about a mile, a couple of miles, in fact, in some cases, all the way up to Ogle. Now, again, we're going to continue to make our way northward. This is incredible amount of storm surge. Notice this in Port Charlotte right now. They were hit hard by Punta Gorda. When Charlie came in, I hit Punta Gorda. Their winds only extended outward 25 miles per hour. This one extends 70. It's going to get to 100. One more stop up to the north, if we can take you up toward Tampa. And this is why they don't have the bright red. And that mainly, Anderson, is because the path we were talking about is in this direction. So they're going to be more with a northerly wind. But if this system shifts off the coast, which we were talking about, that area of red, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet, will encompass all of this area of Tampa and St. Pete. So it's critical. I know this track right now is a bad wind maker, but of course, this could be just as worse with storm surge if we get a shift at the top of the hour. Anderson, we'll keep you updated.
Yeah. Tom, I appreciate that. Richard Rand is with the North Miami Beach Police Department. He joined.
Well, it's taking its time. He's getting off the coast of Cuba, and there has been some major interaction. The only thing we can tell you as far as an update is it's slowing down at 6 miles per hour now. And, of course, that means a lot because it continues now, which was northwesterly, more northwest, but it still has that northwesterly component, which means it's not due north. We thought by now this would have occurred so we can pinpoint better for everyone a landfall. Everybody just wants to know where landfall is going to be and what time. Cannot do that just yet, so we're going to rely on the model still in the National Hurricane Center. Wind still at 120, but it's been undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle, which it's done several times, many times in the last several days, but it's slowing down. Notice on this picture here, you're going to see a little wobble at the very couple ends of the frames of the animation. That's part of the eye wall replacement cycle. Last year when Hurricane Matthew made its way up the coast, it did the same thing in the Freeport, Bahamas. And every time you go through one of these, you have a new center of the eye and you need to replot the track. Let's take a look at the track. So this is just coming out now. I'm looking at it for the first time as well. All right, we have seen a little bit of a shift now to the west. Not by much, but I do believe that we had more of a movement like this. So again, there's still a cone of uncertainty, but it takes it directly over Tampa now, which isn't far off that track. If we go further to the north, it still keeps Atlanta in the same position, but drops it down a little bit more toward the south. Again, this is new to us. We're going to continue to monitor it, but it's still a good 90 miles per hour as you get into Monday morning. So, again, what we're seeing here, and we're going to continue to monitor this, and we'll kind of do a little research and study it a little bit more for the next half hour, but not a big change. One change they have done is they've extended now parts of the storm surge watch, and you can see the amounts. What we're seeing in Key West is critical right now. And again, we had a wind gust earlier at hurricane strength. That's 74 miles per hour. It's the first gust at hurricane strength. But we are going to watch, of course, the storm surge. I show you the winds here. And again, you can see they're common, but we're getting some pretty good wind gusts at 38 at West Palm. I mean, that's enough to down some branches, even power lines. 35 gusted in Miami. Then you're getting 56 now in Marathon, and there's 66 in Key West. So it's going to ebb and flow when it comes to the winds. But I want to break this down for you. When we take a look at the bright white, this is more of where our eye is coming in. Moving into Key West overnight by dawn tomorrow. We still expect it to make its way, and these models will change somewhat in the next couple hours, at 3 p.m. moving in toward Naples. So it takes its time. Even toward Tampa, we're looking at about maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and you can still see the circulation. Concerns are going to be on the East Coast of still storm surge coming around these large feeder bands coming in. Little concerned about Jacksonville because some of the rainfall totals want to pick up in this area. And we know with Matthew last year, they had significant flooding in St. John's. Now, as we take a look at the extended winds northward, we're going to have some downed trees. I mean, we could see tens and tens of thousands of downed trees. And again, it's going to be significant in the southeastern U.S., up into Georgia and parts of Alabama and South Carolina, because it's hardy pine. It's pine country, and they have very weak root systems, and there's going to be many of them knocking out power to neighborhoods and, of course, blocking trees. When you look at these wind gusts and what the extent could be, these are the peak. I've got to tell you now, and it's kind of hard, Michael and Issa, to talk about this, but once you start to receive hurricane force winds, whether it's a gust or a wind, and I know this sounds frightening, but we know from past experiences, you want to get in the interior part of your house, obviously like a tornado watch or warning. You want to stay away from windows. But they say once you start getting these winds, make sure your shoes are on. Sleep with them on if you have to. If you have a motorcycle helmet, a bicycle helmet, anything like that, go ahead and put it on. And if you have children, then do that as well. Also, fill up bathtubs if you can, any kind of sink, any buckets. You're going to need the water if you lose power. If you have a propane tank, you just don't want to leave it outside, put it in the garage. You don't want it in the interior part of your house if you want any kind of leak. But also, and this is hard, but we saw this too with Harvey, get an axe or make sure you have a chainsaw, even a hammer, what you can to take it up in the attic if you need to escape the waters and get to the roof. Many people get to their attic and they don't know how to break through. And those are hard things to think about, but it needs to be done. Again, with the winds like now, and if we take a look at the radar, a slow movement, only a few miles per hour, I mean, under from what it was just in the last hourly update. And we're going to continue to have these updates every hour now. National Hurricane Center is putting these out every hour. Tornado watch, we had a few of them. But again, moving now northwest instead of west-northwest. That's the beginning of that turn northward. But until that happens, we're really not going to have a good idea of exactly where landfall will be. That's why the National Hurricane Center has got the track for us with the cone of uncertainty, the storm surge, and, of course, the amounts of rain we'll continue to monitor for you. Isa, again, this is beginning. We had our first gust, and that means everything right now the next couple of days. It's you know, full press ahead for everybody.
And Tom, great advice you're giving to all our viewers. But let me ask you this. I mean, one person was saying to me, why is it taking so long? People are still feeling the jitters, but they want this to get this over and done with. Explain to our viewers why it's taking so long for Hurricane Irma to finally make landfall.
Well, I think part of the problem was, why have we been seeing this westerly shift? High pressure in the Bermuda right now has really been a kind of a stronghold. We thought for sure that at some point that area high pressure that's in the Atlantic would break down or it would slide eastward. So our westerly movement wasn't such a big deal and maybe we would see it move north. But in the northeastern U.S., a trough was coming down, but it didn't turn out to be very strong. So it's not lifting it up northward like we would expect it. But again, we've said this all week, until that turn to the north happens, we won't know exactly where landfall is. So it's, again, every hurricane has its different characteristics and its different path. This one's just unfolding before our eyes, not exactly the way we would like it. There is no best case scenario here.
Tom Sater is, quote, keeping a very close eye on Hurricane Irma. And Tom, what is the very latest?
Okay, Isa, we've been able to kind of take a step back and look at the latest advisory because it happened, all of us got to watch it together when the graphics came up, and it's about what I expected. There was now a western shift in that track. But let's break it down because this is critical for a lot of folks here, and a couple of miles here and there means everything. First of all, with the infrared imagery, what you want to see or not is the brighter colors, those higher, colder cloud tops. And when you start to see more of a symmetrical look after it was interacting with the land in Cuba, we're starting to see some strength, although we're still at 120 miles per hour. But now that the eye is going through an eye wall replacement cycle, it's going to most likely start to increase in strength somewhat. Now, it's a Category 3. The National Hurricane Center now wants to keep it as a 3. Here in the CNN World Weather Center, we're not so sure on that because not only do you not have just 90 miles, all right, between in the straits from Cuba to Florida, you've got really now a distance that should take this now on a farther track up toward Sarasota. This is going to be a lot like last year when Hurricane Matthew hugged the coast on the East Coast. When it came through Freeport in the Bahamas, there was a little wobble when it underwent one of these eye wall replacement cycles, and it just stayed off the coast by about 30 miles. When it's on the coast, it's catastrophic damage, but because it stayed off last year, Matthew was light to moderate, but it did a lot of damage on A1A, flooding up and down the coast, even to Jacksonville. They'll see that again with this one, even though it's on the other coast. And then we had this historic flooding in the Carolinas that killed about 24. But here, let's break this down. No longer is it west-northwest. It's northwest. So, again, it still has that component to move more to the west. I still believe when we break this down and we take a look at the new track, this is what we're thinking right now. Instead of the 90 miles as mentioned, this system's going to travel about 280. So it moves from the center, moves probably pretty close to Naples, and somewhere in between Fort Myers and Tampa, we're looking at a landfall. But it's hard to predict the landfall because, like Matthew last year, skirting the coast, it only takes one little wobble here or there to give us a landfall. It could be now that we're seeing a shift in the Tampa area of about 15 to 20 miles, which actually is the worst news for Tampa because it puts you in the eye band of the strongest winds. It'll give you the surge up into the bay, most likely. Even if it's to the north, we're going to be looking at a return flow. So, again, that's the concern. Consensus is generally maybe around Sarasota, Florida, possible landfall. Bradenton, all right, that's Manatee County. Anna Marie Island's going to be smacked with this as well. And it's still, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I noticed this a little bit of a shift from Atlanta, which may keep them out of some of the strongest winds, but they're still in the worst quadrant. But by that time, we'll start to see the storm lose some strength. After that, when it moves up toward Tennessee, the models looked like Harvey, just meandering all over the place, not having a steering current. And that was kind of frightening, thinking, okay, here we go with something that's going to hang around for a while and drop copious amounts of rain. But by then, we think it's going to be dried up, and it's not going to have the amount of rainfall that Harvey had. It doesn't have that water source, so maybe 2 to 4 inches. But we've got to get back and take a look at this path, because this means everything, and it's critical now for the entire West Coast and everyone who lives in that front right quadrant. Everyone in this north white quadrant, which is the center of the entire state, and even into Georgia, which we talked about with the pine trees and the broad pine area with the down trees there. Still looking at Florida and Light calling for 3.4 million to lose power. FEMA's going closer to 5. But even at 3.4 million losing power, that is going to be the greatest power outage in history. And then restoring that power, they believe, will be the greatest restoration of power ever taken place in the U.S. The eye is interesting. We're still seeing some wobbling, but notice the bright yellow banding outside the eye. When that forms and circulates better, when it gets away from the coastline, it'll tighten up, and we should see an increase. So even if it stays at a Category 3, that's still a major hurricane. If it gets closer to a 4, you're not going to know much in the way of difference here. We're still going to have incredible storm surge. We still have, of course, the tornado
the worst of Irma, and then it's about enduring the aftermath. Do you have what you need to sustain yourself down there for 1, 2, maybe even 3 days before they can start to get infrastructure back in place, power back, and stuff you need for everyday life?
Oh, yes, sir. I've got enough stuff for a month. We've got plenty of food, water. You know, a lot of people were saying, well, you got to get out. You know, I don't want to leave. I have an emotional attachment to Key West. All my family's ashes are out in the Atlantic, so I'm staying. Secondly, if a bridge goes out, everybody was talking about that. If a bridge goes out and when we're, without supplies for a few weeks or a month, I'd much rather be home and on this side of the bridge closing than on the other side, where everybody's scrambling to find a place to live and fighting for gas, and 10 million people are trying to get back home and don't know when. So I'd much rather be here.
I hear you. The challenge is any way you look at it. Do me a favor. Check in with me over the next few hours. Just let me know that everything is straight down there. And as you start reaching out to others, let us know how things are doing. Again, I don't want to give you a hard time. I'm just hoping that your time there is not that hard. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Be safe. God bless. I'll check with you in a little bit. John Berman is at the tip of the peninsula of Florida. He is in downtown Miami. He has been getting buffeted by wind there as we start to see wow, look at that rain coming down on John Berman as he struggles to stay put. A lesser man would have been blown away long ago. How you doing, John? I'm trying to draw it out so I can have you there silent for as long as possible.
Shorter questions, Chris. Shorter questions. No, I can tell you it's raining. It's raining very, very hard here. The wind blowing as strong as it has now. Clearly, these bands now becoming closer, not just to bands anymore, but to the bulk of this storm. As you said, the northern eye over Key West right now, which means that a more substantial part of the storm is moving over Miami. We've been feeling it here since yesterday afternoon for some time. The wind's just pounding us here. You saw Derek Van Dam out of Miami Beach. I used to be able to see Miami Beach, but now the rain falling so hard and the soup out there just so thick, kicking up, that it is, no longer even visible. I can see some debris, by the way, falling off the buildings over here, blowing in the other direction, not coming our way. But now we're starting to see the first signs of things really flying around here, Chris, as the wind picks up. I've been giving you power updates throughout the morning. 250,000 people still without power in Miami-Dade. I say still, that number is going to go up before it goes down. Obviously, the winds here knocking things out just left, right, and center. Again, when we could see Miami Beach out there all morning long, what we've been seeing is these mini bursts of green light as the transformers have been exploding, and I haven't seen lights go on there. I think it's safe to say most of the power is out on Miami Beach. Where we are, hard to tell, but 250,000 people without power, and as I've been saying, to put that in perspective, Hurricane Harvey in the heights of the floods, there were 300,000 people without power. So about equal right now, and really the worst of it now just beginning, Chris.
All right, so we know that the estimates are getting close to 400,000 across the state without power. They expect it could be in the millions. The wind is what always gets the headline, but as you know, it is the water that winds up doing the most destruction. Storm surge is a big concern. You showed us earlier that those boats, they tie those lines to the docks, and then often the docks give way. You saw one give way. Any sign of increase in water level yet that's not just the tide, but the storm?
We've been watching that very, very closely, for our own personal selfish reasons here, because if we see it starting to rise, we're going to get out of here and get out of here fast. The answer, Chris, is not really. Mostly right now, it appears to be tidal. These docks you see behind me right now, these little docks that line the bay right here, the water goes up to them and maybe even overtops them occasionally just because of tide and normal waves. So right now, it still has some room to go for when the storm surge comes. But, again, with the winds like this pushing up the Florida Peninsula, the storm surge itself, the worst of it might not come for some time. They had been predicting 3 to 6 feet here in Miami, the Miami-Dade area. And if that does happen, then it would creep up over those docks completely, maybe even to where we're standing right now. But not yet. Not yet, Chris.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to check back with you, John, as a friend of yours for many years. The way your legs are whipping around in the wind speaks to a fundamental structural instability. You should probably tie yourself to something more resilient, maybe a small dog, if you can find one, just to anchor you in place for when we come back to you. It's a good thing you didn't wear a hat. We're going to check back with John Berman. You take moments of levity when you can find them. This is just the beginning of Hurricane Irma. We are literally seeing the least of the worst. All right. Now, one of the assets that we have at CNN is we have a camera. We have a system of cameras, but we're going to be giving you shots of impact throughout the morning and the day and into the evening. Let's show some of the pictures that we have so you'll see what the impact of the storm, what it's taking down, when trees go down, when we start to see power outages, when we start to see structural problems. We'll start to show you the evidence of that on the ground. We'll have roving cameras that are able to show you. Okay, so what are we seeing here? You're seeing the palms go down. And remember, palms are built to bend. It's not a joke. It seems all the best wisdom about hurricanes always seems to rhyme. And that's what they tell you about palms. They're built to bend. Well, they also break. And we're seeing that. The roads are going to get cluttered. The lights are going to come down. Dave Halstead, who used to run emergency services here in Florida, says it's a 1-2 punch. Sustained winds weaken, and then the gusts that are often much stronger come in and break things off. Signs become projectiles, and they can hurt people. They can damage buildings and worse. And remember, for first responders, this is a challenge. If the roads aren't clear, they can't get places. That takes time. It extends rescue time. It makes a bigger window. Flooding adds to that. And again, we cannot say it enough. The wind gets the headlines. The wind is the spectacle. We see it. It amazes. But it is the water that kills. Storm surge is the biggest component of danger when it comes to a hurricane. Florida is uniquely vulnerable to storm surge. It doesn't take a lot to do a lot of damage here. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will give you the latest on the path of this storm. Hurricane Irma is making us wait, but she's coming. And when she comes here, she's going to pack a punch.